What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't your business, but your next big move? If you've been feeling creatively stagnant, uninspired, or unsure of what's next, the Art of Reinvention is here to change that. This 12-week mastermind experience is designed for established entrepreneurs and industry leaders or women in a career pivot who are ready to clarify their vision, package their genius into profitable offers, and execute their next level business strategy without burning out or burning everything down. The doors are officially open. If you're ready to stop waiting and start building your next evolution, head to tracymatthews.com/art of reinvention to apply. Your reinvention starts today. Are you feeling a nudge or an urge to step into what's next for you? Well, if you are someone who is in a season of wanting to upgrade or reinvent yourself or expand your existing offers so that you're stepping into your most brilliant version of you, well, you are in the right place because today I'm doing something I haven't done before. Hey there, I'm Tracy Matthews. I'm a business strategist and reinvention coach, and I'm so excited to support so many women through their season of reinvention. And today I'm going to be interviewed by Cathy Heller. So this is a repurposed interview from her podcast, Abundant Ever After, where she interviews me about the reinvention process and why it's okay to pivot and why you have permission to do so as well. So if you're ready for that next phase or you're ready for that next chapter, this episode is going to hopefully give you the permission to do the thing that you've been wanting to do for a while. So let's dive right in.
Tracy, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. I really love seeing you. So it's always a treat when you're back.
Cathy, thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to be here today.
Good, me too. So you and I have had lots of juicy conversations, and we can put links in the show notes if people want to catch up on previous conversations that we've had. But today we're really talking about reinvention, and I love that word, and I love the permission slip that it gives you. So let's just start with that concept. What compels you to hold up a possibility for people around reinvention? Why do you feel like that's something that's on top of your mind? And why do you feel like that can be actually a helpful stepping stone into what's really next for us?
Well, you have an audience of creative beings, and I am a highly creative being just like you. And reinvention is an opportunity for us to step into our most aligned, most creative, most up-leveled versions of ourselves. And I think, we spend our lives doing a thing that we're known for. And at a certain point, many people get burned out, they get bored, they are wanting to move into a new direction. And for some people, well, I feel like you've reinvented yourself so many times, Cathy, and it's been kind of easy. Just, well, now I'm doing this and now I'm doing that. But for some people,
I make it look that way on the outside, but on the inside, it's a whole beast.
It feels like a little bit of a storm going on, right?
Full storm.
The full storm. But
Storm.
it's hard because, I think when we get to a certain point, I think a lot of people, especially people in business, entrepreneurs, coaches, creatives, artists, all types of people, we hit this capacity for what we've always done. And we're asking this question, what's next? What's the next thing? Is this all I'm meant for? And for people I truly believed who are here to do big work, who are here to make a big impact in the world, who are here to live a creatively aligned life and expand in their creativity over and over again, reinvention is just part of this process. And, I always get the visual of a phoenix rising out of the ashes. It's almost like sometimes you feel like you have to burn the old version of you down in order to step into your true genius. And that's kind of, we talked before on a previous podcast about my hummingbird story, but I see this visual of a hummingbird flying into a forest fire because she wants to do her part. And then all of a sudden this downfall of rain comes to save her. And, it's like taking that risk to step into the unknown when, you're not certain about what's next, but that's the only way to go if you're ready for something big or your next evolution or whatever that looks like for you.
So tell us about what you've been building. You have this whole program. It's called The Art of Reinvention. Clarify your next move, package your genius, and create aligned, profitable offers that build your authority and position you as a leader. Let's talk about, because there's a lot in that, right? Like reinvention is one thing, right? That's one whole thing, like you just talked about, what needs to be burned down so that who you really are
Right.
can be born.
Right.
But what you're really doing is putting it together with that being a platform by which, as you're reinventing, you're clarifying what really is your genius and
Hmm.
really moving into alignment and then actually being able to make money from that space. So there's like a lot of gifts in what you're putting together. Help us understand how all of that seamlessly ties together for you.
So let's step back a little bit because I want to talk a little bit more about where this kind of came from. You
Mhm.
know, I've been an online entrepreneur for 12 years. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and I've been through 5 reinventions up until this point. And when I look back at those reinventions, it wasn't even necessarily like a cognitive thing that was happening. It was just like, okay, this is no longer serving me. It's time to step into the new thing. And then there was this process of like figuring out how do we package this up and create it into something that feels like completely aligned with the person I am now. Because we build businesses for a variety of different reasons, or we start a career. Like, even if you don't have a business yet and you're listening to this podcast, you've been in a career and you get to a certain point where you've almost tapped out on what it is that you're doing there. And it's time for that next upgrade, right? And so after, like, I feel like these last 2 years, I've talked to so many people and I've been sharing this mission of mine, supporting people in their kind of like transformation and reinvention process. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is so needed. And I'm like, tell me more. What's going on with you? And a lot of the things that have been coming up are like, it's like, I've been known in this industry that I built for so long. And, I want to do something different, but like everyone knows me for this one thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm going backwards if I start over, right? Or,
Juicy.
you know, this thing that I built, like I've outgrown my audience and I'm not really enjoying the conversation over here anymore.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
you're feeling this, right? It's like, I think this is like a common thing. Or you've been in a career for years and you're like, gosh, like I don't really want to work for someone else anymore. I'm ready to use
Yes.
these gifts, these talents that I have and step into maybe consulting or doing services so that I'm building a business on my own terms.
Yes.
And I was just do you know Lindsay Schwartz?
No.
She's the founder of Powerhouse Women. And I just was at a retreat of hers this week. And there's like different types of reinvention. And like one of the steps of that is expansion. It's like moving beyond who you
Uh,
were before, right? And part
yes.
of expansion, it's like, think about when you gain weight and you expand, like your clothes are really uncomfortable. Like that process is so uncomfortable. And so
Yep.
what ends up happening a lot of times is because of the discomfort and maybe a little bit of fear and maybe the unknown and uncertainty and getting in our own heads because like we built this thing and we're like we should appreciate what we've built. We sometimes like want to go back to what we know instead of sitting in the discomfort and just expanding onto our next level because that growth is uncomfortable. And so what I've just noticed, I've just been talking to so many people, is there's people who are in two camps. Like they just like kind of stop what they're doing and then they completely move on to the next thing and they're like off with like rocket fuel.
Right.
Or most of the people have been sitting in this indecision, not knowing what's next because they kind of have an idea and they're still running their other business and that's the thing that's keeping them going, or their career, that's the thing that's keeping them going, and they need the money financially to keep going, but they don't have the container or the space to actually work on the thing that's what's next. And earlier this year I had an opportunity to potentially sell my company. I ended up turning down the deal because it wasn't a good deal for me. And it was a hard decision to make because it was like, that was a goal of mine. And it almost felt like an ego death. I'm like, who are you? If you didn't sell a company, that's what's supposed to make you successful. I had to work through my own process around that. But when I was getting consulted by my friend who helps people with these kinds of transactions, he said to me, Tracy, a lot of times people, when they're in a process of like wanting to sell their business, selling the business isn't necessarily the answer, because what's on the other side of selling the business is actually the answer. So I want you to really sit long and deep and like think about this. Like if you just like figured out a way to navigate this transition and moved on to the next thing, would you be able to step into more impact and income and all the things that you really want? Because And so this is sort of like where this whole thing started. And it actually started way back. I mean, it's been happening for a couple of years, but your event last year was a trigger for this. I was so excited to be invited to speak on stage with you and to chat about podcasting and all these things. And that weekend, it was my birthday. I was getting so triggered, Cathy, by like everything. And I was asking for these signs and asking for the next step. And I kept hearing these messages, you're going to be okay, but it's going to be really hard. This process is going to like literally rake you through the coals and the fire, and it's not going to be easy, but you have to do it because you are here for big things. And if you don't, I'm going to keep showing you the lessons that you need to hear. And it's going to get harder and harder and harder until you actually listen to this calling. And so when I look back on all of these stages of reinvention that I've been through, and the current one that I'm like almost to the end, on the other side of, there were 3 steps to that. And the first one was getting clarity, like really clarifying what are my gifts? Because I think a lot of times, I mean, I don't know about you, Cathy, but we like to make things harder than they need to be. I mean, you're
Totally
a genius at this because you always talk about the art of receiving and just being in full alignment with what it is that you're calling in. And if you can tune up that receptivity dial, then you're here, right? So the first step is really clarifying, number one, like what are your gifts? Like what is so easy for you to do that you should not get paid for it? Then creating a vision for what's next. And part of that is also getting your energy back, because I think when we're in a stage of like being out of alignment with what we're doing, we feel so depleted, we feel burned out, we feel almost sucked dry by what we're doing, and it becomes hard to even show up for ourselves and all the things, right? Daily tears, like all these things that happen. So that's the first step, just getting really clear. Okay, like what are my gifts? Where am I going? What's this vision for what it is that I'm creating? And then taking that and then turning that into something that not only can be sold, but sold in a way that feels easy and light and has a full like offer suite and a brand story and everything that kind of turns that into the next version of you. Because part of this, clarifying process, it requires an identity upgrade, which does not always feel good because you have to let old parts of you go. But one of the things that people are concerned about, I know that I've spoken to in general, is like, okay, so here I am in this reinvention. What are people going to think? Maybe I've built an audience, or maybe I've been known for this one thing, or maybe I've been in a career and I have a network of people. Like, how do I explain this? How do I bring them along for that journey? So the second step is really creating the vision, identifying the vision and then creating that and turning that into an offer and a brand story so that you can bring your audience or your network along with you. And then the third step of this is cultivation. And cultivation is all about getting your message out into the world and launching whatever it is that you're creating. And I'm using broad terms here because it could literally be anything. I've worked with product-based business owners. I've worked with for ages, but I've also been a coach and a service provider for many, many years and worked in corporate. So I can literally see how this journey can work for pretty much everyone. And so those are the 3 stages of the reinvention process that I like to support people through and help them kind of get to that other side so that they're stepping into this new identity of who they are and who they're meant to be in the world.
What were those 2 identities for you? Who you were and who you're becoming? What was the reinvention for you that you went through?
Well, I've been through 5. So at each different stage,
Wow.
it's very different. When I left my corporate job, it was like that reinvention was like, okay, here I am, like someone working for someone else, to like this entrepreneur. And then it was like a few years later, I got divorced, and it was like, okay, now I'm a single woman who's like literally like, that was scary for me, out in the world as like basically what we now call like a boss babe or something like that, like carving her own path unapologetically. My next reinvention was when my first company got wiped out in 2008. I think I spoke about this on the other podcast. And in 2008, the market crashed. We all know what happened. And many businesses were wiped out. And my business was one of them. It was an unfortunate situation. but I had lost my identity in who I was as a business owner because my whole identity was wrapped up in having this jewelry company that had 350 accounts and the celebrity clients and all the things. So that identity upgrade is like, okay, how do I step into this next version of me, which was someone who actually wanted a to be paid very well for what they did, but I didn't want to work so hard. So that was like kind of, I don't know what I would call her. I would call her probably like the elevated jeweler or something like that at that point. And then that launched me into my coaching career. And there have been other reinventions since then. But this one that I've been going through, it is from, you know, a lot of us start businesses out of a trauma that we have. I know that that's something that has been common in a lot of industry because we're here to solve a problem. You know, my first jewelry company, I started it, my mom died, and I was like, oh, well, I want to live my dream. And so technically it was started out of a trauma. My coaching business was started out of a trauma. My business was wiped out in 2008. So that that was carried through with me for many, many years. And so this new identity upgrade that I'm releasing, it's like I'm co-creating out of a positive energy, and it's going from people pleaser person in a trauma loop who is here to serve to creative force of nature who is here to make a big impact and change people's lives for millions of lives forever. So it's a big shift for me, that one.
I feel like first and foremost, I just want to acknowledge what you talked about when we are really standing at the fork in the road and we want to become aligned with ourselves, and we've become aware that we're holding on to an old identity and it
Yes.
doesn't fit us anymore. And you know, I think that there's so many moments in our life that we go through these inflection points, but especially now, like I'm 45 and I'm thinking about
Yeah.
all the literature right now. I'm reading about perimenopause or things like that. And I'm thinking
Here with
how,
you.
yeah, like I'm thinking like once you turn 40, there's so much of you that you start to access that you didn't have the courage to access up until you turn that age. And all of a sudden, you're up against, do I choose who I really am? Or do I hold on to who I've been pretending to be because it's served me up until now, but maybe I want to change the dynamic in my marriage, or maybe I don't want to agree to these unconscious agreements. I want to set boundaries, or maybe I want to change my career. And I went through that right around 40 when my podcast started at 37. By the time I was 41, I was ready to move out of talking about straight entrepreneurship into talking about spirituality. And I remember going to a trip with my family, and it was the most peaceful place in the Smoky Mountains. And inside of me was this like just battle between, can I choose to be in the world as my most aligned, authentic spiritual self? Or do I hold on to what I've been creating because my podcast was already successful, my book had already come out, people knew me as helping them with their entrepreneurial journey, and I wanted to help them with their soul's path. And there was a lot at stake because I was already the breadwinner and all of that was riding on me. And yet at the end of the day, I decided to answer to my heart. I was like, I need to create what's being asked of me to create from my soul. And whatever happens, the fulfillment won't be in the ROI. It'll be in the aligning with what I'm meant to be creating right now. And so I just did a giant pivot, and a lot of my audience stuck around. And it wasn't that different in a way, because the work I'd been doing was really about your soul's calling as being paid to do your life's work as an entrepreneur, doing creative work. And now I was really talking about listening to your inner compass and finding flow state and moving into higher consciousness, and really what are the spiritual practices that get us there. And it wasn't actually that big of a shift, but it was for me in the choosing of it. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's almost like this is the door that you have to walk through in your 40s. And in one way or another, you're going to upset the apple cart. And I think what you said is really true. And I heard someone recently say this, I forgot who it was, but the idea that with evolving, there is grief because you will be losing who you've been, and you'll be losing relationships because the relationships, they might stick with you, but they will not remain the same. They will change. And some people will choose to leave. And you have to be willing to bear the cost of your evolution. And so that is always the dark night of the soul. And I think ultimately, when we answer to our heart, we answer to God, we're always more fulfilled, even if it costs us what's happening externally. So I just really want to acknowledge that because it's a really deep, beautiful, bold move. But the next thing I want to say is what you talked about in terms of clarifying, what is your aligned gift? What are your, genius zones? I think that at the intellectual level, people don't know how to answer that.
They don't, because they feel guilty that the thing that's so easy for them, they should not get paid for it.
Say
Like,
more. So how do we identify what is our genius? How do we understand how to actually choose it if we are so blocked to seeing it because it's just so obvious? It's like hidden in plain sight because it's like the thing that's easiest. We don't even acknowledge that that's our gift.
It's 100% the thing that's easiest. So my partner, Jason, is like an amazing, amazing healer. And when he first started being an executive coach, he would just do these sessions for free because he's like, this is so fun. Like, this is so easy for me and it comes so naturally. Like, I have a hard time actually charging people for it. It actually follows him a little bit. I'm like, dude, you got to like start charging people or give them a free session and then like,
Yep.
but he helps so many people for free because it's so fun for him. And it's so, and he gets such a sense of accomplishment that he is literally changing people's lives because he, with a chemical engineering background and all of these things, he can find all of the problems that anyone's having like so quickly when people, it might take a therapist, someone might be in therapy for 10 years. He works with them for 3 months and they're like done.
That's such a cool, by the way, marriage of two parts of himself. Like who would think that an engineer would also perhaps be a great healer, but like he can problem solve really quickly. And then he has the modality to actually do the healing, which is just such a unlikely pair together inside of a person, but it makes sense why he could be excellent at that.
Exactly. And sometimes it's very hard to see. So if you can't see your own genius, I had to ask people, part of the development of this new program, which is like a stepping stone to my bigger mission, which is all about inspiring kids and young adults to be in their creative genius and use that for their life purpose. And part of the stepping stone was me asking people, because I was really having a hard time, like going back to about a year ago when this transition, when the universe was saying like, Tracy, you can no longer continue showing up in this world as the way that you are, or else like we are just going to keep punishing you. Basically, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And because I know I'm here for such a big mission, it feels so scary. And I think that's why I've been like tiptoeing around it. But I was asking, in that process, or asking myself, like, what am I really good at? And the thing that has always come back to me is like, I love helping people create a really big vision for where they're going. And I'm like, but everyone can do that. Who needs that? Like, it's not a big deal. And so when I asked my friends, I asked Jason, I asked the people that I work with, and the same thing kept coming up. They're like, you're so amazing at this visioning stuff. But I'm like, can everyone do that? And people are like, no, I can't. Like they're like, I can come up with strategy, but I do not have vision. Like I have no idea where I was going. And that to me was like a remarkable thing to hear because, when something comes so naturally to you, you really don't, you just think everyone can do it. Right. And so you asked the question, like, how does someone tap into their genius? Well, you work with someone who can help you break through the layers and ask the right questions and help identify that. And to start, just get in touch with actually what lights you up. Like, What would you do if if like money and time were no issue and add value to the world? Like, what would that thing be that you feel like you shouldn't get paid for? And if you're stuck with this, start asking the people in your close circle what they see in you. Ask them to reflect back to you, because that's the best way to start, because sometimes it's hard to see it for ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. We do something similar in my world where we have people ask people, and it's uncanny how people will come back with themes about you,
Yeah,
things
right.
that they go to you for that you didn't even realize. You talk about making offers to the world, right? And look, not everybody is ready to do that. Some people cringe at the idea of getting paid and putting things out there in and of itself. But the truth of the matter is that so many people, even if they do put offers out there, they're not profitable.
Hmm.
Why aren't they profitable? What's happening that we can sort of start to understand and edit? Why would an offer be profitable, and why is it not? Like, what makes something profitable, do you think?
Well, I mean, if we're looking at the basic financials, like you can take a look at like what you're charging for something and the amount of time, energy, and expense it takes to deliver that product or service. That's like an easy way to kind of calculate like a profit margin. But more than anything, I think that a lot of people, for years I've worked with artists, and there is a common theme that I've been trying to break for years about this starving artist syndrome, where people don't value themselves enough. Once again, probably because it's so easy for them to do these things or create these things. And there's also this worthiness issue tied into it. And they don't know how to price and position their products in a way that actually serves them, that actually helps them sell more of it. Because I think there's a big misconception with what people think. And I think the reason why offers become not profitable is because people are not charging their worth, right? Or the value of what this offer is, or not communicating the value of what they have to sell. So if I look back, like in the jewelry space, just because that's sort of where I've been working in my zone of genius for a while, a lot of times people don't know how to price their products or even communicate the value of what they're selling. And so when they go out to market, they just talk about the item instead of talking about like the experience, the emotional connection, the transformation. Like, what is it going to be like to experience wearing that piece of jewelry to their audience and clients? The same thing for any other type of thing that you're putting out there, whether it's a physical product or a service. What you're actually selling is the transformation. You're not selling what is actually in the package. So, I have a program that I'm releasing called The Art of Reinvention. The Art of Reinvention is a 3-step process, but what I'm actually selling is at the end of the 12 weeks, you're going to have clarity and have an offer to launch, and you're going to have a launch plan at the end of this, and you're going to be ready to go. And you're not going to waste time like trying to figure this out on your own. And this is not another one of those programs where you're just going to come away feeling overwhelmed because you like stopped it in the middle. Like, we're holding you accountable to get the work done. And that transformation on the other side is really what the value of the program is. It's like, if you don't want to waste time trying to figuring it out and piddling around for another year and being confused, like, this will get you through it in 12 weeks. So it's the same thing for just about anything. It's like the more value that you communicate, the more you can charge, and the more value you can deliver, the more you can charge. And so really it depends on the industry. Like a coaching industry, it might be like, how is the product delivered and how are you communicating the value? How are you going to be serving your customers? Or if it's like courses industry, it might be something along the lines of like, how many units can you sell to make the offer profitable and hit like a profit margin that makes sense for you. And so each offer would be independent of what it was, but the biggest part of this is being able to communicate the value of the transformation.
Yeah, that's exactly really what I was asking, not necessarily like the profitability in terms of the time
Yeah.
and expense, but yeah, that's a really great answer. It's like, really, your job is to communicate the transformation. And one of the things you talk about is building your authority. And I think that part of the problem there is, if you don't trust your own authority, if you haven't owned you are an authority, then it's really hard to stand behind and really sing to the rooftops what the transformation is, because you're second guessing your own authority. And so I talk to our audience a lot about waking up in the morning and having a meeting with yourself where it's just you and God, right? And the idea being that you make real space to listen to your sacred authority, right? Like, what authority do you have? Your soul's authority, right? And we each have a place inside of us that is totally worthy and really connected to a power much greater than ourselves. And some people just are not really in touch with that part. And so we look outside of ourselves for authority when the authority comes from within, right?
Yes.
And so when you're talking about being able to stand and declare, what the transformation is, I think it requires, as you then say, really, what does it mean to build authority? But what do you mean by building authority? How do you help people to do that in their space? And I guess it starts with within, but then it has to be something that's communicated so that they are able to take up space as an authority on this topic, whatever it is.
Exactly. So when I think of authority, this is really like, what are you an expert in? Or like, what is your zone? We talked about zone of genius and your gifts and all of those things. Like, authority starts from there. And then you brought up the conversation of worthiness, because worthiness is a very important part of this, is like understanding that like you have to feel that confidence in yourself. And just by being you, you are an authority and an expert at the things that you're a genius at. And so building authority, I truly feel like it really starts with building your own internal confidence and filling your inner cup up so that you can show up and like shine from the inside out. Really tapping into your gifts and genius and knowing, what are the things that I am really good at and how am I creating transformation in the world for people, right? So that transformation that you're able to facilitate creates an authority in your own space. So let's say we're looking at someone who is, a manifestation authority like you, Cathy, right? So, one of the ways that the things that makes you an authority is that you are literally a vessel for receiving, and you are authentic, and you're showing up, and you're showing people in your own way, shape, or form that your transformation and your journey has been a little bit messy, but you're just showing up as you. And you're giving people permission to know that their authentic selves is good enough to do and be and show up in any way that is possible that they want to be. And so your natural authority and gift is like, to me, when I look at you and I reflect back to you, you allow people to be who they are, and you bring their gifts and their genius out from within. And you have this natural ability to just give people permission to just be. And to know that we're all starting somewhere and it's okay. And here we are, like it's been such an honor to watch your evolution and you building authority, starting out as someone who was helping people quit their day jobs and then moving into spirituality, and now talking about abundance and like having it all and really getting into a zone of receptivity. It's all connected. And I feel like with you, your authority really comes in the concept of like everything is connected and anyone can have that connection if they want it. And I'm here to show you how. I'm an authority in doing that. Like, my authority is, I feel like I am a genius at helping people create big visions beyond what they think is possible for themselves and use their creative genius and gifts to express that into the world. Like, I am great at that. I've been able to help people across multiple industries step exactly into that. Someone else might be, their authority might be in messaging or branding or marketing, but it's really getting clear, dialing down what is the essence of what it really is, and then radiating from there.
Yeah. It's, first of all, thank you. That's extremely kind and sweet and generous. And I just think I think it's uncanny, actually. I think if our soul could look down and have a drone view of us living our life, and we could see it from that perspective, it's like laughable how we give away all of our authority all the time.
Mm,
It's 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 almost like, how dare we do that? It's like we were each sent with a unique, really important um gift, and by our own denying of it, it's like we have a loaf of bread on our head and we go door to door looking for scraps and crusts.
why is that?
It's fascinating. I mean, it comes from being connected to the ego side and not to the soul, right? And so it's like, instead of plugging the toaster into electricity, which is the source
Yeah.
of the fire, it's looking everywhere but the source,
Like, let me
right?
stick it in the water and get electrocuted.
Let me stick it in the cat food. It's like, it doesn't work. You can't plug it into anything else. And so when we try to plug into everybody else for approval, or we try to plug into anything external, we just keep coming back with this empty bucket. But when we plug into what we already know to be the truth, it's like, you just, I just read that when Steve Jobs died, I guess before he died, he gave everybody the same book, which is like, I'm going to screw up the title, but it's something like The Anatomy of a Yogi or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Really, like, he said that that was the path that led him to trust himself to start Apple, right? So think about if each one of us had that level of an quote unquote Apple idea inside of us. Now, those
Yes.
Apple ideas are not all about businesses. Some of them are about humanity, or some of them are about our own village, or some of them are about our own life or our own health or whatever it is.
Innovation.
But the fact that that lives within us, when you strip away the noise,
Isn't that
right?
so
You
crazy?
strip away so much of what we're constantly oriented toward, which is outside of ourselves, and you move back into what's inside of you, and you just give it full authority and you fully trust it. It's quite powerful. I was just laughing before because what I'm going to say is going to be so controversial, but I actually don't mean it in a polarizing way at all. I just think it's really interesting because I was at a dinner the other night, and one of my friends was joking because he was like, how Trump really pisses people off? People either love him or they hate him. And so again, it doesn't matter which side you fall on, but the point was funny and interesting. And he said, I think part of what bothers people is, he just says, when people say, under what authority, he goes, my authority, and it's just like,
Exactly. He like fully trusts himself.
right. And like, whether people are for him or against him, it's a fascinating thing, because it's something that everyone wants to do for themselves, right? I'm not saying everybody wants to be him and his personality and his issues and his good and his bad. I'm not talking about that. But on some level, everybody, if you just take that one piece, everybody wants to be able to walk in the room and just say, because I want it, because I said so, because that is
Yes.
a fact, right? And we don't, because we all people please. And so it's like, it's so funny how that is either something people love about him or can't stand about him, because I think that one quality is very triggering. And in and of itself, whenever we're triggered, we get to look at like, ooh, what is the juiciness about that? But I think that that's so fascinating. And I think women in general just give away all of their power as if you're constantly asking someone else to vet it or to tell you if it's okay. I mean, I just had this conversation with my team, and I said, we don't need to have 6 hours a week of team meetings, because I have realized that I will come up with a decision and I'll just tell you what to do. And then it'll either work or it won't work. But the amount of time I spend asking you to be my emotional support dog and tell me if you like what I'm just telling you to do is insane. Like, we don't need a brainstorm. It doesn't need to be a conference call. It's a gut feeling. It's a gut check. Let's go do it. And I think that, what's your human design, Tracy?
I was just gonna ask you, I'm a 6'3" generator.
I'm a 6'2" manifester.
Okay.
It's really
Wait,
interesting,
that makes, wow, you're a
right?
manifestor. Okay.
Yeah. And
That makes sense.
I'm so into it now because whatever, I've been on a deep dive, but manifestors are meant to trigger people. They're meant to like light a
Right.
spark and initiate. And it's such a big spark, right? That
Mhm.
some people love it and some people hate it. And that's your job. And it's like, don't shoot the messenger. Like that's what I came here to do, right? But being in my alignment, true to my own design, is like, I'm gonna make some waves, right? And so
Which is amazing.
manifest, what'd you
That's what we
say?
love about you.
Yeah. And some people actually don't step into their manifestation as a manifestor because they really don't want to make waves. So they're not actually being true to their calling. You know, like how many times, and you might feel this way, I'm curious, but people who are listening, it's like, how many times do you wish you could just be satisfied watching Netflix and going to sleep? But yet you have this calling that you need to create a movement or you need to start a podcast or because that's your soul's calling. It's like
Yep.
it chose you, right? Moses was in the desert saying, my daughter asked me the other day, she was studying it in school. She goes to Jewish school. She goes, how old was Moses when he went back to Egypt to like bring the Jewish people out of Egypt? And she goes, because in the movie Prince of Egypt, he looks like he's 35. I go, no, chat GPT that crap. I go, you'll see. He was 80. He was
Oh,
80
wow.
because it took 80 years till he was willing to go hear that call. He didn't want to do it. It was a big job. He was like, pick someone else. I have a list. I can't talk. So many of our leaders through history are like, oh, I wish this would leave me alone. Right.
And
But
if it's
no,
not leaving
I'm
you
being
alone,
asked. This is the reason I'm here. So I have to answer the call. And how many times have you been the one in your family and you're like, my sister brought my parents back together, not to get married back together, but into a room together after 25 years of not speaking. My dad was remarried. I was like, I want no part of this. And she's like, either do I, but I just feel I have to do it. And I'm so grateful that she did. She tolerated the confrontation. And then my dad died, and he died having made peace with my mother, which my sister gets, I would say 98% of the credit for. She didn't want that job, but her soul asked her, you have to do this. You're being asked. So when you really step back, it's like, how different is it to live your life in accordance with what is it that you know, whether it's convenient or inconvenient? And do you answer to what you know to be the truth? Or do you stand and resist it because of what it will cost you to be in your own alignment? It's like,
it's
it's
such a
just,
tricky question. Because here's my thought on this, and I just witnessed this in my own life. It's like when you don't listen to it and you're meant for something, it will keep coming back, and the universe will send you stronger, harder, more challenging messages to show you where you're not in alignment with where you're supposed to go. And, depending on what you believe, like if you don't complete the contract in this life, you're going to be repeating it some in the next life. So it's kind of like you have to do it now. And it's funny, on social media, what do you say? Yeah.
and by the way, so many wisdom traditions. I mean, Judaism says that, but Buddhism says that. So many
So
wisdom
many.
traditions say
Yep.
that.
I just did this story on Instagram Live a couple days ago about trusting yourself. And it's like that internal trust of an inner knowing and following that calling. That's the beacon that moves you forward, even if you aren't sure what the next step is, because the confidence comes in taking the steps, not in knowing what the steps are. It's just taking one step at a time, right? And so it's a lot, because I know that people who are listening to this podcast are resonating with anything that you just said, Cathy, or anything that I've said. You know that you're here for something bigger, and it's time. Like, it's time to stop playing small. And if we want to get really freaking woo, we are in a huge, depending on what you think, like, and we're not here to get political, like we're in a huge like reordering of society and of the universe and the way
I
that
mean, that's so obvious from any scope.
I
Yes.
know. It's
Yeah.
like what we know in 6 months, like the world is going to look very different.
Mm-hmm.
And what all the great spiritual leaders are saying, calling them spiritual leaders, but the people who are like tapped into this energy, we're moving towards a call towards individualism and oneness instead of this we energy. It's more about you, like getting into alignment with you.
Love that.
And all of these constructs are falling away because the thing that drives me crazy, you see these people like going nuts on the internet about this and that. And I'm like, everything's an illusion, you guys. This is not even, this is all just like to distract you from what's really going on. And if you could actually see that for yourself, instead of thinking the thing is not the thing. I hate to say that. And, I know we've talked about this a little bit, Cathy, but the thing is never the thing. It's always something beyond that. They're trying to make like distract you over here so that you're not paying attention. And like the more that you can get in alignment with like your truth and pay attention to what matters to you, the better off you are going to be instead of being distracted by all this other stuff, because nothing is as it seems.
It's so beautiful. I mean, that's such a powerful concept, but the idea that like, there's like the bandwagon person getting on the bandwagon, whatever the bandwagon is. And then there's the individual. And I love what you said about how the individual is really about oneness, because Rabbi Aaron always says, sameness is not oneness. Oneness is that every instrument in the orchestra is unique and part of a whole. And so individuality is oneness, because it means that the periodic table of elements with all of its differences of silver and copper and boron and whatever are actually all different manifestations of this one gorgeous divine energy, right? In different ways. And we're meant to be our individual light. And when we are each just doing our individual thing, it creates the tapestry that is one tapestry with different threads and different colors. And that is what oneness is. Like under our chuppah, the rabbi said in his blessing, he said, may you be each so much one. May you be so one that in your oneness, you respect that each other in your otherness is what makes you one. That each of you being an individual is what makes the whole, right? And you're so one that you respect each other, right? And then that individuality is what makes the whole so much greater than the sum of its parts, right? And that's the idea, is not to turn the other person into you, but that you're each individually in your potential, which makes you both even bigger and better, which is something even more than each of you as an individual. So it's the point. It's each of us does our own little thing. And so we need to wake up from I need to be, in order to belong, I have to be the same. And instead it's like, what is my gift as an individual? And can I tolerate standing in my unique individuality and know that on behalf of the whole, I need to be in my individual potential, which is so cool and
It's
so
so
beautiful.
exciting. Ah!
So I love that you're such a deep thinker. And I just want to highlight that you are so good at visioning. And I think it's because you are such a good artist. And I think I once asked my friend who's a painter, what makes a good artist? And he said, the capacity to see. You have to be able to see to paint. You have to be able to see in order to draw what you just saw. You have to see really well, vision. And so I think it makes sense that you can see so many possibilities. You have a great imagination. And so I love the idea that you can take people through a process to reinvent, give them permission to trust, and then help them see so much further in themselves than maybe they could see. So tell us where they can come be a part of what you're about to go do.
Awesome. So I'm sure Cathy will have links and everything in the show notes, but I'm launching a new program. It's called The Art of Reinvention. It's a 12-week mastermind experience where I'm going to support you in reconnecting and reigniting your vision, getting excited about your business, and turning this into profitable offers and walking away with a launch plan for how you're going to move this idea forward into the world. This is not another one of those programs where you just leave overwhelmed. We are literally working with you, me and my team, to hold you accountable to get this done, because I know that the people who are joining this program already are action takers, and they're just ready to make their impact and step into the next thing. And it is definitely for people who are asking themselves the question, what's next? Like, what's next for me? And I'm ready for this next big adventure, and I'm ready to tap into my true gifts and my genius and make my impact on the world.
I love the idea that you lead leaders, because it's just perfect.
Yes, I love it so much.
Tracy, thank you so much for such a juicy conversation. And I hope that if you're listening, you are feeling inspired and reinvigorated to trust whatever is being asked of you, and that your reinvention is your gift to the world.
Thank you so much for having me, Cathy.
Yeah.
I hope that you enjoyed that episode. If you haven't done so yet, make sure that you go subscribe to Cathy's podcast, Abundant Ever After, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or here on YouTube, wherever you're watching it. And if you'd like to learn more about the Art of Reinvention program, it is my 12-week group coaching mastermind style program where I'm going to walk you and support you through your reinvention season to help get you on the other side, whether you're launching a new business, whether you're pivoting your business, or whether you're someone who is in a career pivot and ready to do something more for whatever reason that is. I'm looking forward to supporting you. You can check out the link right over here in the show notes, or head on over to tracymatthews.com/art of reinvention and check it out for yourself. Thanks so much. Ciao for now. The real risk isn't making a change. It's waiting too long. If you've been stuck in indecision, wondering what's next for your business or your career, this is your invitation to finally get clarity and take action. The Art of Reinvention is a 12-week immersive mastermind where I'll help you refine your vision and craft a roadmap for what's next. Create high-value, scalable offers that align with your genius. Shift your brand positioning and message to bring your audience along. Execute with confidence without losing momentum or starting over. Spots are limited and doors close soon, so join us at tracymatthews.com/art of reinvention. Your next chapter is waiting. Are you ready to claim it?